Welcome to Creating Calm Parenting with Mind, Body, and Spirit. I am Corinne Cayce, your co-host. I'm an integral leadership coach, a mother of 2 children, and a lifelong student of the Edgar Cayce readings. And I'm here with my friend and co-host, Arlene. Hi, Arlene.
Hi, Corinne. Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Arlene Diamco. I'm an integrative physician, a pediatrician, and a cranial osteopath. And we are excited to bring this topic to you today. It is on Edgar Cayce and warts and the power of mind, body, spirit healing. So it's so rich in the readings with so many testimonials of how people have been able to just process their words or get rid of them, and doing so in a gentle way, in a safe way. So we are looking forward to having this discussion with you today. So as we get started, Corinne is going to do our opening meditation.
Yes, thank you so much, Arlene. So if you are able to, please feel free to close your eyes or just let your attention come inward for a few moments. Let's begin with finding your feet on the floor. Feel the pressure on the soles of your feet. And imagine a spot on the sole of each foot where you're connecting down to the earth. And let your attention come now to your hips, your waist, your low belly. If you're sitting down, just let your weight relax down. Let yourself be held. Whatever you're doing, invite your breath into your low belly. See if it's possible to relax your hips, your low back a little bit more. Now bring your attention to your chest. Feel your shoulder blades, your shoulders, your heart space. Feel the beating of your heart. And let your shoulders relax. Now find your jaw, the base of your skull, and your ears. Check in and make sure that your jaw is relaxed. Maybe place your tongue on the roof of your mouth behind your front teeth, letting your breath move easily in and out through your nose if that's comfortable for you. And just let your attention rest with your breath for a moment. All right, thank you so much. So we'll begin with an excerpt from the Edgar Cayce readings as we do each time, and this comes from reading 759-9, and it's on warts. And there was a question around, what are warts? Why are they appearing on my body? And the response that comes is, it is the accumulation of cellular forces attempting to act themselves. Or as we see, every atom of the body is a whole universe or an element in itself. It either coordinates or it makes for disruptive forces by its activity being expelled from the system through the activity of the eliminating system. And as it accumulates, it gathers those things about it and is not absorbed. Hence, we have them as moles or warts. Okay, so we picked this excerpt because it touches on everything that we want to talk about related to warts and why they're there and how we can get rid of them in terms of there being a physical aspect and element to it, a mental, emotional aspect to it, and a spiritual element to why our bodies do what they do and how we can engage with them and move toward healing. So, Arlene, maybe you can start us off with just talking a little bit about, how modern medicine views warts and how what we've learned about what the Cayce readings say about warts dovetails into that and sort of ground us in this conversation.
This is really interesting to me because there are some overlaps between modern medicine and what Cayce was saying, but there are also actually very big differences as well. It's
Mhm. Yeah.
currently generally accepted in medicine that warts are caused by a virus, specifically strains of an HPV virus or the human papilloma virus. And
Mhm.
it's thought that it's more common in kids and teens, that they're more prone to it because their immune systems are developing. They haven't developed immunity to the virus.
Mhm.
That's the thinking. And we know that sometimes when there's an injury to the skin, it can also provoke the onset of the development of warts. So it's
Mhm.
really curious. But other than that, there are many things that are so elusive about it, because it's like, why are some people more prone to warts? Why are some kids more prone to warts than others? And some of them, they can be spreading and be on multiple areas of the body. And some warts
Mhm.
can last for many years. Um,
Mhm.
they can literally appear overnight. They can last for years, but then they can also disappear as quickly as they came. So
Yeah.
there's this element of it that's very elusive to modern medicine, that we don't have the details to explain it. And that's why when we go to the Edgar Cayce readings, it's fascinating, because he provides these details that can help fill in some of those gaps. And
Yeah.
so I knew there were some things that he wrote about, just there was a disruptive forces, or the cell
Mhm.
was broken. And so that broken cell phenomenon, I mean, we hear that echoed in modern medicine too. There can be an injury to the skin that can provoke the onset, so
Mhm.
that there's an injury kind of breaking the cell and its function, but also seeing that that the cells are these little microcosms, like little universes into themselves. So they're not
Yeah.
working in an integrated way with the rest of the body. It's like it's created this own
Mhm.
little universe that became a physical manifestation and bump on the skin, with excess
Mhm.
growth of the keratin, and its elimination systems aren't working properly, and so that coordination is lacking. So that's a very fascinating way to look at warts to me, just having learned, like, oh, it's a virus. But other than
Mhm.
that, it's like we couldn't figure out, like, but if it's a virus and relatively like like not harmful virus, like they don't tend to become malignant lesions or like cancerous lesions as some certain moles might be. But
Mhm.
um, but why do they just appear, and then why do they just disappear? So we
Mhm.
just being able to talk about it, it helps us to understand that Casey perspective, because then that also helps us with the therapies as to, like, what do we do about these warts?
Mhm.
And we have options. The options in the readings are also very interesting.
Yeah, and it seemed like in reading through a bunch of the case histories related to warts, there was also an element in addition to, the eliminations may not be working as well. There was also a component of there may be something kind of hormonal that's going on as well. Like, during
Mhm,
these periods of transitions was one of the what was a theme, like when
mhm,
kids are hitting puberty, or even later in life when hormones are changing a lot, and there's an elimination and assimilation becomes so important there too. But that during those times of transition is another time where the body is more vulnerable to warts. Perhaps there was one reading from a 12-year-old girl who was
mhm,
asking what causes these warts that I'm getting on my body, and the readings answered, this is a period of transition, and these are the result of the cellular force changing, which comes to every individual through those periods of transition. So when there's like a rapid changing, which we talk about with puberty all the time, right? Like pimples can kind of come during that time, and there's sort of these skin things that start to happen, and warts may be part of that, of the body trying to assimilate and move through glandular changes that are happening in the body, and needing, and it's a sign kind of like needing some more support
mhm.
or help to help that movement happen. Yeah.
Yes, in that reading 487-22, he says that it is the effect of the localizing of centers that attempt to grow as they do. So
Yeah.
during puberty, the signals in the body are saying grow, and so
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
it's like these little universes, since they're not integrated, they follow the signals, but in their own way. And so they grow into these
Right.
little bumps on the skin, which is not the most welcome all the time, but they're following the signals of the body, which is really curious. It's like, oh, okay. So it's like, how can
Yeah.
we get them more integrated feeling?
Totally. How can we bring that into alignment? Which is so interesting to think about at a cellular level, each
Mm.
cell having its own kind of consciousness and following what it's being told to do, and sometimes what it's being told to do gets off, so it's
Mhm.
saying grow, 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 but
Mhm.
instead of it being integrated and aligned, it's growing in this way that isn't what we want necessarily or what feels right, but that leaves a lot of room for there to be power into bringing it back into
Mhm.
alignment.
Yes.
It's not something that's out of our control, right? Which is so
Yes. Yes.
so interesting. Yeah, great. Well, let's dive in and start talking about therapy and the therapeutic concepts, shall we, Arlene?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it starts off with more topical applications, and
Mhm.
so we, of course, cannot talk about skin things without bringing in the beloved castor oil, and so
All right.
that is the simplest way to approach,
Mm.
warts and other skin things, and it's to apply it regularly, so a consistency is key, and in talking about castor oil before, we know the vibration of castor oil helps to break up stuckness. So here, where we have this overgrowth of the keratin cells in the skin, it helps to break up those signals and to help to integrate them with the rest of the body. So even the frequency, it can vary, but I would say like about twice a day. That was written in the readings. A castor
Mhm.
oil massage twice a day can be helpful, and just to have like that healing vibration and to help that penetrate into the skin. That is
Mhm.
the simplest topical remedy. And then
Mhm.
we go into others that add a little bit more potency, but the next one would be castor oil and baking soda mixed
Mhm.
until it's a gummy or putty consistency, so a little thicker
Mhm.
than a dough. And then to
Yeah.
apply that overnight or place with a Band-Aid. And Corinne, you had experience with that growing up with
Yes,
castor
I
oil and
sure
baking
did.
soda.
I sure did. I had a wart on my thumb when I was young, maybe 10 or 11 for a long time, and my parents made up this mixture of castor oil and baking soda. We kept it in a little jar, and it was pretty thick, and every night before I went to bed, I would put a bit on and put a Band-Aid around it and sleep that way and just kind of leave it on as much as I could, really. And pretty soon, within a couple of months, I want to say it just kind of sloughed off. It just peeled off and went away, and it never really returned. And that's always stayed so clear in my mind as something that was it maybe itched and was a little bit uncomfortable at times, but never super invasive or intrusive to my ability to live my life. And then it was gone. And and never returned. And I feel like with these remedies that we're talking about right here, that are the gentler topical ones, castor oil and baking soda, and then the next one that was mentioned really frequently in the readings is spirits of camphor, either alone or mixed with baking soda, similar to the castor oil, and making a kind of potent little thing that you can easily rub on there.
Mhm.
There are so many case studies in the readings, short gathered snippets, almost more than anything else I've seen, of people working with these remedies: castor oil, castor oil and baking soda, camphor, or camphor and baking soda mixed together on planters, warts, all sorts of different little warts or spots on their faces, on their feet, on their hands that they'd had for years, that were not going away, that they were even having them taken off surgically, and then they would reappear using these remedies for several weeks to several months, gone for a lifetime. I think what Arlene and I decided happened was, there is a river was written in the late 50s or early 60s, and there were remedies recommended for warts in There Is a River, and it was such a well-known biography. So many more people were exposed to Edgar Cayce and his readings thanks to There Is a River, that many people saw this very easy remedy for working with warts and started using it and writing to the A.R.E. saying, "Thank you so much for this remedy. It's so helpful." So Gladys Davis, the stenographer and keeper of the readings at the Edgar Cayce Foundation for her whole life, did such a meticulous, amazing job of gathering them up. So we have all of these instances of people who suffered and struggled with warts for so many years, these remedies being so helpful and really curing them. And it's exciting and inspiring to see, because these remedies are so easy and inexpensive and inintrusive to these things that can be make us feel self-conscious and not and like not strong in our bodies, especially for
Yeah.
kids around puberty time. Yeah.
Absolutely, and then, and it varied depending on, like, where the lesion was or the person, the
Yeah.
situation, because the spirits of camphor and baking soda, it is a bit more penetrating, and so he
Yeah.
did say that it will make the skin sore after, 2 to 3 days, but it will disappear. So there is some overlap, starting to be some overlap there with the spirits of camphor and baking soda, with some more modern remedies like salicylic acid or freezing it off. So using caustic things to either burn or to
Mhm.
to slough the skin off. And but I love the ease of making these remedies and using them, and the baking soda too. So it's
Right.
it's like, to me, even that spirits of camphor and baking soda, even though it's
Mhm.
sore, it's still actually not quite as caustic as, like, some of the modern treatments that we have. And
Mhm.
then in the Casey remedies, he did also mention a couple other things of 20% hydrochloric acid, where you just dot it. And so that's definitely getting much more caustic. So
Right.
again, similar to salicylic acid or the freezing, or if you go to the dermatologist, they actually use beetle juice to be more caustic and penetrating. So I
Mm.
I would go towards more the gentle remedies, especially for kids, and avoid, like, the more
Mhm.
caustic ones. But that was mentioned
Mhm.
in the readings. And there was this solution of alum water that was used. So alum is it's a these chemical compounds that are made out of, like, hydrated sulfates. And you can actually buy potassium alum is used for baking. And so you make a solution of that with
Mm.
water and then rinse your hands in it, and to let the solution, like, stay on it. So these
Mhm.
are all the topical remedies. And
Mhm.
but then we start to get into these vibrational things. And
Mhm.
it was he wrote in this one reading, 5416-3. This was for a 17-year-old female. It says, those abrasions on body may be removed by caustic or burning off, same as, like, similar as freezing in the beetle juice and medicine,
Mhm.
or they may be removed by one who has sufficient of electromagnetic influence in the touch as to disintegrate the vibrations, as may be done even by concentration and massaging just a bit. That is
Wow.
completely, like, yeah, mind-blowing and fascinating. And
Mhm.
apparently, Edgar Cayce himself was one of those
Mhm.
individuals that he could just massage it and shift the vibrations just enough, and then they would tell the person, "Oh,
Mhm.
just forget about it for a few days, not to focus on it."
Mhm.
And the the board would just fall off. So,
Yeah.
like I said, these things can just come and go instantaneously, and that's the part that makes it so mysterious for medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. There were several notes in the readings where the person requesting the reading asks, "How shall I get rid of this wart?" And the response is, "This body here, Edgar Cayce's body, can get rid of the wart for you." And he'll and just by rubbing his hand over it. And then Gladys Davis would make a note that said, this was true. This would happen regularly. And he did it in this case where he would just rub his finger over it and say, now forget that it is there. And so he's inviting their consciousness to be involved in the healing right there. You just do that. And then it would come off. And Gladys had note after note saying, and this happened, and this happened, and this was something that he could do. And when asked about it,
Mhm.
he said that he felt like he could do it because of what's mentioned here in the reading. There's a certain electromagnetic vibrational quality that his body had that allowed for him to be able to do this. And he said very plainly, and other people can do it too. That this is something that we can all do, which I think is exciting. Like it leaves a
Yes,
lot of
yes.
space for us to work, especially for you, right, Arlene, who's doing
Uh-huh.
energy work with cranial, sacral, and
Yeah,
osteopathic.
with the
That's an element
osteopathy,
to your work.
right.
Totally.
And cranial osteopathy. I mean, when I read that and because, gosh, I wish I had read these readings, like, so long ago, specifically on this,
Yeah.
topic, because my kids could have used it, my patients could have used it, and, we've been implementing many of these things, but that idea that just shift the vibration of it, that suddenly becomes like, "Oh my gosh, you can learn how to do that," and once you learn how to do that, you could potentially, like, teach other people how to do that. So I'm going to be
Mhm.
exploring this more and more and see, okay, how can I tap into that and access that and shift the vibration the way that they're describing. And I feel like, it just takes a handful of times you start to gain an understanding of it. And so that makes it
Mhm.
very exciting for me in the osteopathic world and what we could potentially do with that idea.
Mhm.
And it's warts and it's
Mhm.
other things. I know he mentioned for moles, which are different than warts, but he had said that there was an indentation in the energy in the field as it had
Mhm.
formed. So thinking about energy healers and that vibrational influence. It's like, oh yeah, you
Mhm.
feel the energy field around you or the biofield. It's like, is there a little indentation in that area wherever there's a lesion or
Mhm.
whether wart or other things. So we can take that concept and actually start to apply it to other things and other healing of other kinds of issues. Just
Yeah.
integrating and harmonizing.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely. And
exciting.
it is exciting. And there's a way of thinking about it in terms of being able to raise our own energy vibration so that
Mhm.
we can do that for other people. And there are also readings where it's pointing to the power of us doing it for ourselves, right? Like working with, if just to circle back to what we mentioned at the beginning of our conversation this morning, where the idea of each cell kind of having its own consciousness and connecting that to this powerful idea in the Edgar Cayce readings that we touch on in so many different ways around the importance of knowing your spiritual ideal, of that spiritual ideal being embodied at a cellular level.
Mhm.
And we've come at it in all different ways of how to go about setting that spiritual ideal and working with it. But we found this excerpt from a reading that we wanted to talk about here because in bringing the cells into alignment, in vibrationally moving toward health, of letting go of the things that we don't need, whether that's a wart or a thought pattern that's really destructive to our sense of well-being, or trauma that we're holding in our bodies, which we've talked about in all these different ways, right? Like the power of bringing our minds to it. And at a cellular level, when the cell is oriented toward the ideal, focused on that as the purpose for moving and generating energy and creating, then health and flow is naturally what arises from that. So, to demonstrate that, we have this example from a reading where a woman is talking about multiple things, but she has a question about some warts that she has on her fingers and how should I heal them? And the reading says, for the pathological condition of those disturbances in the cuticle, so for the pathological, the physical condition related to these warts around your cuticle, make a very weak solution of hydrochloric acid, about 1 drop to 40 drops of water, or in that proportion, rinse hands in same, or touch those portions that show indications. So that's a topical remedy similar to the ones that we've been talking about this morning. But then the reading goes on and says, but for the psychological effects, find in self that to which self has been closing self, those influences from within and from without that would make for a more in line with that the body would develop in its spiritual relations and associations. For these are well for thee, with thee, and will bring about much more contentment. For peace, harmony, and well being is found most in knowing that the ideal is being adhered to, and in filling that place for which one knows, feels, realizes it has been chosen to express in its daily activities. So, what I hear in this is you bring a pathological course of action to this. Take physical action to help yourself get better, and also bring about a mental, emotional, and spiritual effort toward healing as well that involves looking at where are you blocking, where are you shut down related to that which brings energy and joy that will bring for contentment within yourself, and look and orient yourself toward knowing and believing why you are here and what it is that you are doing here, and bring yourself, the more that you tend to that, this will naturally allow for healing to take place of these um, of these warts around your cuticle that you don't want to have, which is just like a beautiful demonstration of the depth and breadth of the Edgar Cayce readings in terms of like how big and yet how small it can be at the same time. Yeah.
Yes, and one thing that you had suggested to me was calling the warts or the bumps by the, like the warts or the bumps versus my
Yes.
warts, my bumps. So not attaching to them in that way where it would encourage them to stay. And this is really interesting because there was actually a story from Dr. Wayne Dyer's daughter, and she did just this kind of idea, this concept. She had some warts, they call them bumps, on her face that were
Hmm.
there were multiple ones, and they had been there for years. And so he had consulted with his friend that was a dermatologist, and they knew that there was this mind body influence. So they, presented her with this idea, and it was amazing because she took the idea herself and decided she was going to talk to them, talk to the bumps, not her bumps, the
Hmm.
bumps.
Hmm.
And within days, they started to slough off after being there for years. And
Hmm.
Dr. Wayne Dyer asked her, like, "What did you do? What did you say?" And she decided that since he was so excited about it, that she was going to keep it a secret. And so she didn't even tell him until she was an adult what she did. And she was like, "Oh, yeah, I never told you." So this is what she said. Before she went to sleep, she had a conversation with them, and she said, "Dear Bumps, I love you, but we cannot be together anymore, and I am letting you go with love." And
Hmm.
so they disappeared in 4 days after being there for years, and just like that. That's so
Hmm.
beautiful. So there was
It's
no
so beautiful.
anger, there's no frustration, because I know
Yeah.
these things that are on the skin, and it's like the world can see them, so they can make people feel really self-conscious, they can make people feel angry and frustrated and not like a
Yeah.
certain part of their skin. And so
Hmm.
to speak with them with love like that, but to be actually firm about it, it's like, "We cannot be together anymore. I'm letting you go with love." That
Right.
phrase alone
Yeah.
is so much.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic example. And you're right. My parents were clear with me in talking about the word to making that distinction between like this is mine and this is not mine, and doing that in a loving way. It brings so much more power to it. And it seems like Edgar Cayce was saying the same thing to people when he was saying, now forget about it, let it go. Right. So that there's so much power in mind is the builder and
Mhm.
really bringing the mental of not, I hope this happens, or this is this thing that's really hard, but really being so clear, this will happen. This is what's happening. I don't have anger or frustration, which is a form of holding on.
Mhm.
I love you and I let you go. And that bringing that attitude in addition to castor oil
Mhm.
being your strongest physical partner in this, I
Uh-huh.
think with so many things, you could just like douse ourselves in castor oil to get better of the which castor oil supports the letting go, the movement
Uh-huh.
of flow, so and bringing that mind to it and then adding as you need, whether it's the baking soda or it's the spirit of camphor or any of the other things that we can let go of these things that can hold us back in this way. And the possibilities are endless. This is such a small,
Uh-huh.
specific thing that we're working with. But the larger idea that we're talking about in terms of the power that we have at a vibrational level within our own bodies, bringing intention to it, bringing these enhancements, these tools to support us it's endless, right, Arlene? I mean, we could
Mhm. Mhm.
go in
Yes,
so
and
many directions.
I like the idea of combining the topicals with this mind, body, spirit component. So as you're massaging the castor oil to say
Right.
those phrases, "I'm letting you go with love."
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and and
absolutely.
and being you can apply that to any like, the way we talk about any other symptoms or illness of not
Yeah.
claiming it as, my and looking at it with love, but saying,
Yes.
"I'm being
I'm
clear,
ready to let you go.
lovingly clear."
Yes.
Yes,
Lovingly
yes.
clear. Absolutely. All right. Well, we have a lot to work with and try in our own lives, I know, and I hope that you all do as well, have found some gems here to bring in your own life if you're dealing with any of these things. And a delight to talk with you as always, Arlene. I can't wait for our next conversation.
Thank you, Corinne. I look so forward to it too. It just like brightens my day, like being able to talk about these things and delve into the Cayce readings like we love to do.
Yes.